In the last lecture, we learned that we can create a dynamic component in Angular using two ways. First, by using ngIf directive, and second, by using dynamic component loader. Now, in this lecture, we will learn how we can create and render a component dynamically using ngIf directive. For that, I have created a very simple Angular application. In this Angular application, we have two links, this home link and this user link. In the home link, we are displaying some content for the home page. And if I go to this user link, to this user page, there we are displaying a list of users. Now, what we want is when the delete button of any one of these users is clicked, we want to display a confirm model window. And that confirm model window should be rendered dynamically. So when this delete button is clicked, we will show a confirm model window. In that confirm model window, if the user clicks on OK button, we will delete the user. Otherwise, if the user clicks on cancel button, we will not delete the user. Now let's go to VS Code, and there I have created a new Angular project called Angular Dynamic Components. Now this Angular project, it uses Angular version 8. So if I go to package.json file, there you will notice that all the Angular packages are of version 8. Now, there is a reason why I have created this project in Angular version 8, and you will understand it in the coming lectures. But whatever I'm going to explain in this section, that also holds true for the newer versions of Angular as well. Alright, now in this project, if I expand this source folder, there we have an app component. And apart from this app component, we also have a home component and the user component. So in the web page, this content, it is coming from home component, and this content, it is coming from user component. Okay, now if I expand this user component, there I have also created a component called confirm delete. Okay, so if I go to the TS file of this confirm delete component, and let's copy the selector from here, and let me open the HTML file of user component. And there, after this table, so basically using this table, we are displaying the list of users. After this table, I will add that selector. Let's save the changes. Let's go to the web page. This is how the confirm delete component looks like. And it is this component which we want to render dynamically whenever the delete button is clicked. Okay, so only when the delete button is clicked, we want to render this component. Initially, when the page loads, this component should not be rendered in the web page. So for that, what we are going to do is, we want to use this selector here inside the view template of user component. So what we will do is, in the user component class, we will create a property. There we already have this users property, which is storing a list of users, which we are displaying in the web page. There, I'm also going to create a new property, maybe show confirm delete component. You can name this property anything, but I just want to give it a meaningful name. That's why I'm calling it show confirm delete component. Because using this show confirm delete component, we are either going to render the confirm delete component in the DOM, or we are going to remove the confirm delete component from the DOM. And it is going to be of type Boolean. And initially, I'll set it to false. Now let's go back to user component.html, and there we want to render this confirm delete component dynamically. For that, on the selector of this confirm delete component, we are going to use ngIf directive. And to this ngIf directive, we need to assign a TypeScript expression which should return a Boolean value. Here, I'm going to use this property, and I'm going to assign this property to this ngIf directive. So when the value of this show confirm delete component is false, this component will not get rendered in the web page. But when its value is true, then only this confirm delete component, it will be rendered in the web page. Okay, so currently the value of this show confirm delete component, it is false. If I save the changes, if we go to the web page, initially you will notice that confirm delete component has not been rendered because initially the value of this show confirm delete component is false. Now what we want is, in the web page, when this delete button is clicked, that time we want to show the confirm delete component. For that, let's go back to VS Code, and let's go to the view template of this user component.html. There we have that delete button here. So on this delete button, I'm going to bind click event. And when this click event will happen, I want to call a method on delete clicked. Now let's go ahead and let's create this method inside the component class. So let's go to user component.ts file. There, let's create this method. And inside this method, all we will do is we will simply set this show confirm delete component to true. So let's say this dot show confirm delete component equals true. Let's save the changes. Let's go to the web page. And initially, the confirm delete component has not been loaded. If I open the developers tool here in the elements, if I expand this body, this app root, there you will see that we have a div, we have nav container, we have main container, and then we have this router outlet. And in place of this router outlet, this user component is being rendered. So you can see the selector of that user component. Okay, there we have this table, but you will not see confirm delete component rendered here. So after this table only, we are using the confirm delete component, right? But that is not been rendered here yet. But when I click on this delete button, you will notice that that confirm delete component has been rendered. So this has been added here. Okay. So this component, it is being rendered dynamically at the runtime. Initially, when the page loads, it is not getting rendered. Only when the delete button is clicked, that time only this component has been rendered. So this is what a dynamic component is. A dynamic component gets rendered at the runtime dynamically. So this is how using ngIf directive, we can render a component dynamically. Now, what we also want is here, if you see, here we have this hard-coded value, John Smith. But now what I want is, let me reload the page again. So let's say I want to delete this user, Sarah King. So when I click on this delete button, it should say, are you sure you want to delete the user Sarah King? But currently it says John Smith because this value is hard-coded. So what we want is, to this confirm delete component, we also want to pass this user data, the current user data for which we have clicked on the delete button. And doing that is very simple. We can achieve it using custom property binding. So in the confirm delete component, we are going to create a property. Let's call this property maybe user to delete. It is going to be of type user. So I've created this user model. Okay. And now we are going to bind this user delete in the parent component. So we are using this confirm delete component here. So here we are going to do a property binding. So to this user delete, we want to assign this user object. But here the problem is this confirm delete component, we are using it outside of this table. So outside of this table, basically we are using this ng for directive on this tr element. So outside of this tr element, this user variable will not be available. So what we will do is in the user component.ts also, we will create a property. Maybe let's call it user to delete. It is also going to be of type user. Okay, and when the delete button is clicked, that time we will set this dot user, and let's say we are going to get the current user as an argument here. So here let's provide a parameter. Let's also call it user, and it is going to be of type user class. And then to this user property, let's assign that user parameter. And here we have this error, and the error says user does not exist on type user component. All right, so we are naming it as user to delete. So we want to set that one. Okay, now when we are calling this on delete clicked, there we also need to pass the user object. So here we are calling this on delete clicked. To that, let's pass this current user. Okay, so in this way, we will also have the user which we want to delete inside this user to delete property. So I'm going to assign this user to delete property to this user to delete property of confirm delete component. Okay, you can also name it something else in order to avoid any confusion. All right, so in this way, inside this confirm delete component, inside this user to delete, we will have that user object which we want to delete. And we can use this property in the HTML. So here, instead of showing a hard-coded value, what I will do is I will use string interpolation syntax. And there I'll say user to delete dot name. Okay, let's save the changes and let's quickly check if it works. Let's go to the web page, and there we're not seeing anything. Let's see if we have any error. And here we have an error, and it says cannot bind user to delete since it isn't a known property of confirm delete. So if I go back to VS Code, let's go to user component.html, and there we are trying to bind user to delete. Now in the confirm delete component, we have this property user to delete. But for some reason, this property is not being recognized. That's because if you remember, in order to do custom property binding, we first need to decorate this property with @input decorator. So that is the part which we missed. Okay. And in order to use this @input decorator, we also need to import input from angular/co. With this, let's save the changes. Let's go to the web page. And now we don't have any error. Let me close this. Let's go to this users page. And now we can see all the users. Now, when I click on this delete button of this Sarah King, in that case, in the confirm model, it should show the username. But here, we still don't have the username. Let's see why is that. Let's go to VS Code and let's go to confirm delete component.html. And there, I think we have this typo error. So let me copy this property name. It is user to delete. And let's go to confirm delete component.html. And there, let's say user to delete. So here you see this T is in caps, but in the property name, the T is in lowercase. With this, if we save the changes, if we go to the web page, and now when I click on this delete button, you will see, are you sure you want to delete user Sarah King? So this is working. Let me refresh the page. And let's say I want to delete Jonas Fleming. So I will click on this delete button. In that case, that name should come here. So in this way, we can pass data to a dynamic component using custom property binding. So here we are creating a property decorated with @input decorator, and then here we are doing custom property binding. Now what I also want is when this OK button is clicked, I want to return true, and when this cancel button is clicked, I want to return false. And also when any one of these buttons is clicked, I want to remove this confirm delete component from the DOM. Let's see how we can achieve that. For that, we can use custom event binding. So let's go back to VS Code and let's go to confirm delete component. There, let's go ahead and let's create an event. So to create an event, first of all, we need to use @output decorator. And in order to use this @output decorator, we also need to import it from angular/co. Okay. Now here I want to create an event, and let me call this event on confirmation. This is going to be an event. So the type here should be event emitter. And we need to import this event emitter from angular/co. Now here we also need to specify the type of data it is going to emit. In this case, it is going to emit a Boolean value. Okay, and let's go ahead and let's create a new instance of event emitter. For that, we can use this new keyword, event emitter. And here also we need to specify the type of data it is going to emit. In this case, it is going to emit a Boolean value. And after that, we need to use a set of parentheses. So here we are creating an event. Now we want to raise this event. Now when this event should be raised? This event should be raised when either the OK button or the cancel button is clicked. Okay, so in order to raise this event, I'm going to create another method. I'll call this method maybe on confirmation button clicked. Okay, and here we are going to receive a value which is going to be of type Boolean. And then what we want is we want to emit this event. So here we will say this dot on confirmation dot emit. Okay, and to this emit, we also need to pass the value which we want to emit whenever this event is raised. So in this case, we want to emit the value which we are going to receive inside this value parameter. All right, now when we are going to call this method, we are going to call this method whenever either the OK button or cancel button is clicked. So let me copy this method name. Let's go to confirm delete component.html. So let me close this one for now. Let's also close this user component.ts. And here we have the confirm delete component.html. There we have this OK button and cancel button. So here I'm going to bind click event on this OK button, and to this I'll assign this method. Now when the OK button is clicked, in that case we want to emit true. So I'll pass true here. So this true will be assigned to this value parameter, and that will be emitted whenever this on confirmation event is raised. In the same way, let's also bind click event on the cancel button. So here, and when the cancel button is clicked, again we want to emit a value false. So this false will be assigned to this value parameter, and here we are raising the event and we are emitting this value false. All right, so let's save these changes. Now what we want is we want to bind this on confirmation event in the parent component. So the parent component here is user component. So here what we want is we want to bind this on confirmation event, and for event binding we use a set of parentheses, and when this event happens we want to do something. So here we are going to pass a method to this on confirmation. Let's say on user deletion confirmed. Okay, you can also provide a meaningful name here. These names are getting a little bit lengthy, but I just want to use some meaningful name so that looking at the name user can understand what this method is going to do. All right, now this method will also receive the event data which this on confirmation event will emit. And we know this on confirmation event, it is going to emit a Boolean value. So that Boolean value, we can specify it here. And let's call it $event. Now let's go ahead and let's create this method in the component class of user component. So let's open user component.ts file. There, let's create this method. So this method is basically going to handle the confirmation clicked event. And here it is going to receive a value. It is going to receive the emitted value which the event has emitted, and we know that that value is going to be of type Boolean. All right, so here the first thing which we will do is this event, this on confirmation event, it will be raised only when the OK button or the cancel button is clicked. So here what do we want to do is the first thing which we will do is we will set this show confirmation delete component to false. That means once the OK button or cancel button is clicked, we want to remove the confirm delete component from the DOM. So let me go ahead and let me set the value of this property to false. And then based on the value which we have received from the event, let's write an if statement. And here let's say if the value is true, that means if the user has clicked on OK button, we are going to write the logic to delete the user. But if the user has clicked on cancel button, in that case, we will simply hide the component. We will hide the confirm model window and we will do nothing. So let's quickly test if it is working or not. Let's go to web page. And there, when I click on this delete button, it is showing this confirm model window. Now, when I click on this OK, it should hide this window. That means it should remove this component from the DOM. If I click on OK, so nothing is happening here. If I click on this cancel button, in that case also nothing is happening. Let's see why is that. Let's go to VS Code and let's go to confirm delete component. So there we are binding the click. Here I'm misspelling this click. So it should be click. Save the changes. Let's go to the web page. And now when I click on this delete button, it should show the confirm delete component. When I click on OK, it should hide this component. In the same way, if I click on cancel, in that case also, it should hide this component. That means it should remove that component from the DOM. So in this way, using custom event binding, we can also emit some data from the dynamic component. Okay, so if we want to pass data to dynamic component, we use custom property binding. But if we want to emit some data from the dynamic component, we can use custom event binding. So this is how we can create and use a dynamic component in Angular using ngIf directive. Here we are using this ngIf directive in order to render this confirm delete component dynamically. And to this dynamic component, we can also pass some data using custom property binding, and we can get some data using custom event binding. Now, all which is left is when the delete button is clicked, we might want to delete the user. So for that, let's write the logic. So in order to delete the user, first we need the index of that user object in the users array. So for that, in this class, we already have access to this user service. From there, we want to access the users array, and in that users array, we want to check the index of the user which we want to delete, and we have that user inside this user to delete property. So here, let's say this dot user to delete. So this will give us the index of that user. Let's go ahead and let's store it in a variable, and let's call it index. Now, using this index, we want to delete the user from the users array. So again, for that, we'll say this dot user service dot users. So it is this array from where we want to delete the user. And on this, we are going to use splice method. And to this splice method, we are going to pass the index. So we have that index inside this index variable. And from this index, how many elements do we want to delete? We only want to delete one element. We only want to delete one user, right? So we'll pass 1. With this, let's save the changes. Let's go to the web page. And let's say I want to delete this Mary Jane user. So when I click on this delete button, if I click on cancel, that user will not be deleted. But if I click on this delete button and when I click on OK, in that case, that user has been deleted. So in this lecture, we learned how we can create and render a dynamic component using ngIf directive. Now in the next lecture, let's learn how we can create and render a component dynamically in the DOM by writing some code.